David, let's start with Polanyi's paradox. What is that, and why is it relevant?
Well, so Polanyi is a Hungarian philosopher and scientist, and he wrote a book, I believe it was published in 1961, called The Tacit Dimension, in which he sort of expressed or articulated the importance of tacit knowledge in human behavior. The quotation I give in the paper is, we know more than we can tell. And then he goes on to give the example of the skill of a bicyclist or a automobile driver cannot be simply articulated in words, or more concretely, I could give you a day-long lecture on how to ride a bicycle, and at the end of the day, you wouldn't know how to ride a bicycle without having ridden one. And the point that Polanyi was making is that there are many things that we tacitly understand how to do or are capable of doing that we do not explicitly understand how to do and cannot articulate in terms of a procedure. So riding a bicycle would be one example, but there are many, many others. We don't know the procedure for coming up with a new hypothesis or for making a persuasive argument, or for that matter, for recognizing people from a distance, or even recognizing someone as they grow up that you haven't seen in 15 years and they've changed greatly. How do you know that that's the same person? Or how do you choose the sort of locomotive path to navigate along up a steep hill with a rocky surface and catch your falls in real time? These are all actually things that we sort of do as onboard equipment. Or another great example would be interpreting the nuances of spoken language more than just the words individually. These are all things that we know how to do that are sort of built in. They're kind of part of our hardware, but we don't know how to accomplish them explicitly. We don't know how to write procedures or describe the rules for doing those tasks. And so the point of this paper is that makes them an extreme challenge for computerization, for automation. That automation primarily works on taking the explicit procedure that we already do and codifying those steps so that a machine can do it in our place. So when we have a computer program that does calculations or sorts through files or searches through words or helps us lay out a circuit board, if we were a CAD user, it's following a set of codified explicit procedures that we already understood, and now we have laid out those steps. But hard to do that if we don't actually know the procedure for the thing that we're accomplishing.
Yeah, one of the things, I think I've probably told the story before, but one of the most beautiful and inspiring and moving videos I've ever seen is one that looks at Andrew Weil's attempt, and finally successful attempt, to solve Fermat's last theorem. And he had this proof of the theorem that was knocked down. But for a while, he was celebrated as one of the greatest mathematicians of all time. He was pretty, he must have been exhilarated for a while. And then it turned out the proof's not right. And then he spent a rather horrible set of time, as you might expect, trying to resurrect that proof. And he couldn't. And to hear him talk about it, he says, and then one day I looked up, or I put my head down and I looked up, and he saw how to solve it again. And he can't explain what happened there. He has no idea of that intuition, that aha, that eureka moment. And to me, it's one of the most beautiful, mysterious parts of the human enterprise is that, of course, computer scientists wonder and philosophers wonder whether that's just a matter of time before we understand that process. You want to weigh in on that?
Yes, absolutely. So first, that's a great example you just gave. And let me emphasize that this paradox, and the paradox being that we do things that we don't know how to do, applies as much to the mundane as to the sublime, right? It applies so as much to proving an incredible a century-old mathematical challenge. That's one example, but something as simple as walking up a flight of stairs, or looking at a kind of garbled piece of text and figuring out what it says, which is, of course, what you do with these CAPTCHAs all the time.
Or empathy. When someone comes into a room who's had a bad day and you recognize they need a little affection or kindness or cold drink.
That's right. So both of these things are, will require, draw on a set of capabilities that we possess, but they're not in the kind of not in the kind of accessible, analytical, procedural set of steps that we would use to exploit to have a machine do the same thing.